get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ben Glass. He's a great legal marketing in BenGlassLaw. I will formally introduce Ben in a second. Ben, I always like to talk about other episodes people should check out on the podcast, and a mutual friend, Brian Kurtz, I think he's the most guested on my show out of any guest. I think maybe I've had him 3 or 4 times. Amazing guest and direct response genius. And I love, and Ben does too, geek out on direct response marketing. I had Ron Popeil on. If anyone's heard of Ron Popeil, he's like the infomercial king. Unfortunately, he passed away this year, but he, if you've heard But Wait, There's More, that's Ron Popeil. So check him out. Perry Marshall, and there's many, many more. Ben, who are your favorites direct response? I know you're going to say Dan Kennedy, but who are your favorite people of all time in direct response that you learned from?
So I think Kennedy for sure. Jay Abraham is another great guy that I've learned from. And I think the youngins, Jeremy, they miss going back and reading the Al Reese's and the books about advertising and direct response when we didn't have the internet, when TV was limited, when you had coupons people had to mail checks back to. Like going and understanding that history, because the principles of direct response marketing don't change. Why? Because we're dealing with human beings, right? Interestingly, I'm a lawyer. It's the same principles that apply when I'm speaking to a jury. It's the same thing. I'm dealing with human beings on the other side who are going to make an emotional decision and try to back it up with logic, right? So a lot of parallels there. And again, anyone who's in this world who doesn't have a library, I see your part of your library behind you of the history of advertising and marketing and great advertising, really is missing an opportunity to excel in whatever field. It's highly crowded, right? It's uber competitive today.
Do you have other favorite books you mentioned? I think, is it The Immutable Laws of Marketing was Al Reese and someone else, Dan Kennedy, Jay Abraham has a bunch of books. Any other favorite marketing or direct response books? I love Joe Sugarman. Joe Sugarman was another guest on my podcast and a friend. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, but he is one of my favorite copywriting direct response books of all time as well.
So I would say anything in Kennedy's library, the No BS series, I would say, bringing to modern, but it's still principle based, is any Russell Brunson's current work is great. And of course, our friend, Brian Kurtz, who you mentioned earlier, his book, although it's not all about direct response marketing, his book Over Deliver, I think is an amazing book about how to be a person of influence without standing up on top of a big shelf or big stage and saying, "Hey, look at me, the light's all on me." And Brian is the expert, bar none, on that.
Love it. Yeah, for sure. Over deliver. And Perry Marshall's book, The 80-20 of Sales and Marketing, is a good one too. So this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. By the way, as Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect their Dream 100 relationships. How do we do that? We help you run your podcast. For me, Ben, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and the companies I most admire on this planet and feature them and shout from the rooftops what they're working on and share their knowledge with the world as well. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. We've been doing it for over a decade, and you can email support@rise25.com if you have questions. We probably have been free, so many episodes that people can just learn for free on our podcast, so they can check that out as well. And Ben Glass has been a personal injury lawyer, I think, Ben, at this point for over 40 years, right? And
probably almost 40.
Almost 40 years. Okay. I don't want to age you, but I think I read somewhere 40 years and 40 years plus. But the most impressive thing is he's a father of 9 children, 4 of them adopted from China. He's a small business advocate, a nonprofit charity supporter, and a soccer referee. Okay. And he got a scholarship for playing soccer. So he could hold his own. And if you're watching the video, you could see he's got many books, like business books, legal books, but a teenage soccer referee. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And he's a recognized expert. I mean, lawyers Ben travel from around the country to be trained by you and your team at the BenGlass Center for Growth and Innovation. And you run not just BenGlassLaw, but the great legal marketing. And you help law firms all over the country. I mean, you're kind of, I mean, I have heard about you for years and years and years, even though I'm not a lawyer, just names come up of people who are really, really smart at helping people in business. So when, you can find his BenGlassLaw and the Great Legal Marketing. And you've authored several books, The Truth About Lawyer Advertising, 5 Deadly Sins That Can Wreck Your Accident Case, and many more. So Ben, thanks for joining me.
Awesome. We're done. Yeah.
That's it.
That's a very nice introduction, Jeremy. Yeah. And, the work you do is very important. And you're following a basic principle, philosophy of life, which is asking the question always like, what can I do for you first? Right. And being the giver of your talent and gifts. That's what makes the world go around. And that's, I think, my space in the world is to try to get people to recognize you are special. You have gifts, you have talents. Let's not hide them. Let's use them.
We're going to dig deep into how does one get to the point where you get to all the stuff you don't want to do, you don't have to do anymore. And sometimes it's a mindset thing, but I want to start with the 9 kids, because obviously that jumps out and people probably hear that and like, I have 1 kid, I have 2 kids, I'm swamped. Right. And so there was a major decision you made at some point to expand your family. So just talk about that thought process, with your wife and why.
And yeah, sure. And we've been swamped. And so, I've written part about this in my book called Play Left Fullback. We had 4 kids and a dog. Sandy is my wife and says, I think we're called to adopt. And I said, you're crazy. We have 4 kids and a dog. We have a very full life. There's a gap. There's about an 8-year gap between child number 4 and child number 8. Child number 8 or child number 5, right? He just graduated now from Virginia Tech, and Matt came along, and my wife said, I think we're called to adopt. And I said, well, you're really crazy. Meanwhile, my sister, who couldn't have children, adopted it. And so through that, we kind of saw the process of international adoption. She adopted from China as well. We went to a Stephen Curtis Chapman concert. I don't know if you're familiar with the Christian music genre. Stephen Curtis Chapman was a very, very popular, longtime artist and advocate for adoption. He adopted girls from China. And that changed our whole life, because at that concert, I said yes. And 18 months after that, we were in Beijing. Adopting.
Did you really have a choice when your wife said we're called to adopt at that point?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
for sure, because I had said no. I had said no several times, but that's too much. That concert and God speaking through Stephen Curtis Chapman changed my heart. And 18 months later, we're in China with Kevin. Kevin just turned 20. A couple of years after that, we're in China again to adopt 6.5-year-old Emma. A couple of years after that, Sandy shows me, hey, there's this video on the internet, because now there was more video. In the beginning, we didn't have a lot of information. Video of 2 children, one 12, one 11, in an orphanage playing. And there was a group that was advocating, Jeremy, for older child adoption. When you're 14 in China, you're no longer adoptable, right? You stay in the social welfare system. And so again, we were all in, and at different times, one of it or both of us would be really frightened and scared. We didn't know what we were getting into, and the other would hold each other up, which is a great for parenting thing. It's how it's how you don't get overwhelmed when you've got more than 2, right? Because 1 changes your life, 2 you're even usually with your spouse, 3 you're outnumbered, and now you got to figure out like how we can do it as a family unit. And so adopted David and Leah. They were 12 and 11. They both still speak Mandarin. It's been a journey, and and I will say this too quickly, is that being born in an orphanage, being abandoned by your parents as a child, all of my kids had some physical imperfection, let's just say, that's early childhood trauma.
It's a whole set of new challenges.
It's a ton. But here's the interesting thing is that our kids have given more to us than we ever could have imagined, because we've learned so much brain science over the years. And because you're famous for asking about like turning points. A big turning point was when we would start to go and seek out experts and attend conferences, and it would be in a room with hundreds of other parents who were in the same place as we were. Some of them were obviously farther along the experience path, and just hearing those stories and hearing resources that they had reached out to and hearing hope, that was very helpful to us, which gets to something, you and I talk about, which is, they're getting into groups and playing in groups of people who are farther along, whatever it is, a business path. In that case, it was a raising children from hard places path, whatever it is. Masterminding with people is really, really critical. So here we are. We're got a couple are still at home. They'll need probably our assistance for a long time. The whole bunch are home from college, and a bunch of my kids are launched. We just had our 6th and 7th grandkids in the last 6 weeks. So 2 of our daughters.
Congratulations.
Yeah, last week I looked up at the dinner table. There's 9 of us around the dinner table. Like, wow, that's a lot.
I'm fascinated, Ben, by people who make decisions that are there's a path that's harder, and they consciously make that decision so my wife's a child psychologist. So, adopting, she's worked with, kids are adopted, obviously, but, adopting from young age versus older, there's a lot more baggage. Right. And so, yeah. So what was that decision like ago? You could adopt 2 more kids and they could be, 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to 10, 11, 12.
Yeah. Well, at certain point from our Christian faith belief, at a certain point, you believe or you have this feeling that you are called to something, and that there's a reason you are called. And it can border on sounding arrogant, right? And I don't want it to be that way, but it's like, okay, this is the unknown. These children, their lives would have been profoundly different. And especially now, China is a much darker, more restrictive, kind of horrible place to live, actually. But it's not like we saved them from that. But that certainly was part of the thinking then. I think it's like wrong thinking now in retrospect. And you just take on. So part of my mantra is you live life big, right? You have this one journey, Jeremy, through life. There's no do-overs. We can wish we were 18 again, but that's not going to happen. And you don't have any control over when you're born, who you're born to. You have maybe some influence on how long you get to stay here on Earth. And let's just go for it. We're blessed. We live in America. We live in Sandy and I in Northern Virginia. We have tons of resources available to us locally, which not everybody in America has in terms of mental health teams and physical health teams and all that stuff. It's one of those things that's not really rationally totally explainable. And I will say this, to be fair, there were times when we would say to ourselves, man, how did we get here? Like, this is really, really hard. And of course, friends and family don't always understand the thought process. They don't understand why you make these choices and why you've made your life more challenging at certain points. And so there's isolation, there's loneliness, until you find other people who are on this path with you, and they are out there. And so today, all of that, much pain, much work, much stress, now kids are doing really well. And Sandy and I are mentors to the next cohort of families. So what I always say when I do podcasts like this is, like, if you know someone who's thinking about adoption or someone who has adopted and they are being challenged, like they are finding it challenging, reach out to me, reach out to Sandy. We don't have PhDs after our name. We have a crap ton of experience, right? And we're really good at pointing people, as your wife probably is, to here's a resource, here's a person, here's an idea. We're really good at that, born of a lot of challenging times.
So when we first got on this call, the first thing you said was about being grateful, and we'll kind of transition the family into business for a second, because there's business grateful, and then there's being grateful for family. And I'd love to hear, what were some of the conditions you learned about in these facilities? Was there anything that sticks out, when we're just thinking personally, like, wow, that you had no idea that you uncovered through your research and also experience with adopting?
Yeah, we uncovered through my kids telling us stories, the older ones. So my son, one of my sons, lived in a nice foster family. And he's actually has traveled back to China and visited his foster parents and sometimes chat with them through video. But as he was nearing a time where he could potentially be adopted, he was basically ripped from his foster family and put back into an institution, an orphanage. An orphanage is not a good place, where he basically had to join a gang within the orphanage, right, in order to survive. Saw a child killed, right? That's trauma. I would say this too, that and the Chinese people are wonderful, wonderful people. The government is, and the leader is, it's a horrible place. The Chinese people are by and large very wonderful. But no matter how loving or caring a nanny in an orphanage is, they have a lot of kids, right? And my one of my sons who had a severe cleft lip and palate, was unrepaired at the time we adopted him. You need a long time to be fed, and you need holding, and you don't get that. And so, no matter how caring they were, it's different from the love of a mom and a dad, the love of parents, right? And the security and the felt safety that our children, by and large, have. Ours, yours and mine. Most children in America have at least felt safety, that they'll be fed, they'll be sheltered, someone will come pick them up when they're crying, someone will advocate for them. These kids didn't really have that. And it can have a profound impact. The first 18 months of life can have a profound impact, because the brain is being wired, right? I didn't know any of this. We've learned it by being forced into this world that we didn't know we had to go to, and now we've learned. So there's just a couple. I mean, it's a lot. Now, I don't want to scare anyone who's considering this, considering adoption, to go, oh my, this is way hard, because we heard stories before. We heard some horror stories. We just don't know what you don't know. And so what our message is, Sandy, and my message today is, you have to be willing to work really hard. I do think this works better if there's two adults involved, right? It can be mom and a dad, and mom and a mom, dad and dad. That doesn't make a difference. But two adults, it takes that energy, because someone's always tired and someone's always frustrated. And to have two people who can tag team with each other and go out and get ideas, that's really, I think, my opinion, that's really, really important. There are single parents who adopt. Bless them. That's the most challenging thing you can imagine.
How do you feel about partnerships in business? I'm sure you get a lot of questions and have helped people sort stuff out, right? Because I could see that same apply to business, but there can be issues with that as well.
Yeah, so I'm in the law partnership with my oldest son, Brian. I'm the sole owner of Great Legal Marketing. At least in law, Jeremy, so many law partnerships of small firms are born of this. Jeremy, well, I like you. I think it'd be fun to practice together. What if we did that and kind of split the overhead and did that? And we don't have a vision for 5 years, which would be really fun to practice. And that's how those firms are born. And a lot of firms go through their whole life that way. And I guess I'm no longer shocked, Jeremy, of how many small businesses they create the business, and whether it's with a partnership or not, they create the business because it looks like it'll be a fun thing to do. I'm a good dog groomer. I'm a good hairdresser. I'm good at building decks, right? Cool. They create a job. Cool. But there's no real proactive thinking about 5 years from now, this is where we want to be. 10 years from now, this is where we want to be. So we can take deliberate steps. So I tell lawyers who are partners or thinking about becoming partners is the first discussion you have to have is when this ends, either because we're tired of each other or one of us dies or has a disability, like how does that play out? We have to write that all down. That's like number one. You're writing down the prenup. Like how does this deal end? And second is, it's really, really helpful if for lawyers in particular, are we running a law practice or are we going to run a business and we just happen to be lawyers and we're going to apply business principles. We're going to look outside the lawyer box for how other successful businesses are run, how they hire, how they come. And that's what my Great Legal Marketing business is about. It's about attracting those lawyers. We mentioned before we went live, we mentioned my friend Brian Beckham was a terrific attorney down in Houston. We're attracting guys like that who are entrepreneurial. They're really good lawyers. And when you combine really good lawyers with really good business principles, there's no top. There's no limit. Lots of really good lawyers, Jeremy, this probably will not surprise you, are frustrated. They don't make enough money. They don't like the practice. And I believe it's because they've never ventured outside the lawyer black box to see how does the guy running the bagel shop or the lady running, the car dealership, how do they, who are happy? Like, what do they do? What are their habits? What principles do they apply to their life and to their business? And that's what I bring to the world, I think, is showing the lawyers who want to be this, want to be happy, like show them, okay, here's the steps to take. Here's the steps to take in this order, frankly.
What's the commonality you see, Ben, of lawyers who are happy?
Lawyers who are happy, they have set their own ego aside about who is going to do the bulk of the legal work, right? Lawyers who are happy, we say you have high profit, low maintenance law firm. Well, in order to have high profit, low maintenance, you can't be the one doing every case, answering every email. And so that's where we get them to high profit, low maintenance. Lawyers who are happy this is interesting, Jeremy. They've given themselves permission to be happy, first of all, because what you learn in law school is that you have to be a self-sacrificial lamb to the client and to the profession and to the community. And you have to work all these hours and you have to run your way up the hard ladder. And then in 40 years, you can be successful, right? And so our lawyers, and I didn't understand this when I began, but I do now. Our lawyers no, who made that rule? Like, that sounds stupid, right? Let's bring happiness far forward in the progression through the profession. So giving yourself permission to think that way first. And then just the we talked about like sort of personal ego of I have to be the one to do all the work, but now also ego of we're actually going to bring in the idea of the bagel baker who down the street who gets customers and they come back and repeat. Like, we're going to, even though he's not a lawyer, we're going to go ask him some questions and be curious about that. And those lawyers, and then they hire. And we talk all about sort of hiring and culture and unleashing your employees on the world, right? Those lawyers have a much higher likelihood, Jeremy, of being happy. Subtitle of my first book, which was called Great Legal Marketing, was How to Make More Money, Get More Cases, and Still Be Home in Time for Dinner, right? That's happiness.
I want to talk about hiring in a second, but you mentioned Brian Beckham. I know we talked about Mark Breyer. And do you feel that there's an identity crisis? Do they come to you kind of already with that shift of I want to be the owner and not the doer? Or is that a shift they have to make? Because I feel like there could be like an identity crisis there, because they, you identify as your profession, right? Not the CEO of the company, but the lawyer.
Yeah. So for both of them, I think they would say, yes, they have had an identity change. Ben has had an identity change because, I'm also from that school of thought, like we are lawyers. So most lawyers come to us wanting to increase revenue by getting more and better clients. They want to solve the advertising and the marketing problem. When Great Legal Marketing was born over 17 years ago, that's really all we did. We showed lawyers how to advertise. We showed small lawyers, small firm lawyers, how to keep up with what was at the time, Yellow Pages and TV. Like that was the media. That was pre-internet. And what happens, Jeremy, that's a relatively easy problem to solve. It's systematic to get more clients and to get better clients, either higher fee paying clients or larger cases if you're a personal injury lawyer like I am. That then causes problems, right? Because now we do need to have employees who can fulfill. We need processes. We need systems. We need structure. And so, but in order to build that and to be the coach of all of that, it takes time. And so you're almost squeezed out of doing the legal work yourself. And again, for Ben, that was hard. Wow, like nobody could do this as good as I could. The legal work, oh yeah, they can. And so those guys that we mentioned, Mark and Brian Beckham, they are today true CEOs. I mean, you still see them involved in a legal case or two if you follow them around for a week, but mainly they're coaching, not managing, coaching their team and unleashing their team's talents on the world. And that makes it better for the lawyer, owner. It makes it better for the clients too, right? The level of service goes up. And when you do that, then you're great for your community as well. So we can solve all the problems that lawyers are trying to solve when they go to law school, but we just eliminate the work real hard, climb this traditional ladder of 2,000, 2,500 hours, 2,800 hours a year billable time. That's old and nonsense.
I mean, lawyers come to you then in this sense, the company is the Great Legal Marketing. So you give them what they want, and essentially then when they get there, you give them what they need. Is that the case?
Yeah. And a big part of what they need is the personal development. It is the mindset stuff. It is I deserve, not that they're entitled to, but I deserve to be happy. It's going to take work. The world doesn't owe me happiness just because I have a law degree. And today, Jeremy, young lawyers coming out of law school are dropping out on $150K, right, to get their law degree. So that doesn't entitle you to anything, but just because you're a lawyer does not mean that you do not deserve to be happy even early on. And, we're almost exclusive with lawyer owners, right? But if that lawyer owner is happy, then all the lawyers who work for that lawyer owner are going to be happy. They're going to be coached. And one day they may go compete. We can talk about that. We view that as a win-win-win. Like America is a win-win-win, like unlimited opportunity.
Is that a common thing you get is, hey, do you have other people who are in my region in your group, or is that not in their mind?
Yeah, yes, it is. Hey, if I join and there's another lawyer who's, in the same state, could be 4 hours away here in Virginia. Like, what if we both start using the same advertising? Sure. What I tell people, Jeremy, is I've been doing this for 40 years in the practice of law. I bring local lawyers in. If a local lawyer who competes with me wanted to see everything we did, I would lay it all out on the table and I would explain it to him. 90% of them are going to go, that's too much, too hard, it won't do it. The 10% who get really curious about it are going to do it with their own flavor, with their own unique avatar client that they want. And everybody looks for slightly different clientele And so you have different messaging, you have different capacity to buy media, you have different personal goals. So we hear it, we debunk it. Not everybody believes me, right?
It's an abundance mentality mindset.
100, I think 100%. And we just, again, I tell them that story. So I brought local lawyers in here and showed them. I've had local lawyers in my mastermind groups show them everything, right? They hear everything. Boom. The world is aplenty.
You talk, Ben, about the importance of team a lot. And I'd love to hear some hiring, it starts with the hiring process and maybe hiring mistakes, what you've seen or what you've seen some of your clients do that maybe other people can avoid.
Well, I think that pre-hiring, you have to understand really what your own culture is. We often talk in terms of core values. My team is doing a reread of Good to Great, Jim Collins' fantastic book. Yes, it's old. The principles are 100% still correct. And so being really clear, and when we talk about core values, Jeremy, that means how do we treat each other inside these walls? Like how do we debate, discern, respect, try to make it a great place. So let me, and I'll get to your hiring question here in a second. But the other thing I think people would be interested in knowing is when Brian, my son, and I ask ourselves, like, why do we exist as a law firm? If you hear from most law firms, it's going to be, why do we exist? Well, we exist to help people. We exist to, be aggressive. We exist to get you the divorce you deserve, whatever it is. We said no. We exist to build a place where people will thrive. First, our people. You come here to work here. This will be the best place you ever worked. You will grow as an individual. You will not want to leave. You will want to invite your best friends who are a good match into work with us. Doesn't mean you won't leave, because we hire a lot of youngins who are still in school, who are growing in their careers. But every decision we make is around that core, which is this will be the best place you ever worked. We want you to thrive here. Because if my team, Jeremy, feels like they're thriving, they come to work, they like coming to work, they're doing work that's interesting to them, they're compensated appropriately, and they're doing work with other people in this building who they really like. That team's unbeatable. I'm convinced I could take this whole group and we could go open up a bagel bakery or a print shop or whatever. The only thing we would need is subject matter expertise in that area. And my team would be, we could build a winning business. So now to your question, which is about hiring, which is, okay, we only want people who we believe match our core beliefs about the world, which is in part asking, what can I do for you? All right. Advocating for yourself. Hey, Ben, perfect would be, I need these three things. Ben can't promise I can always deliver perfect, but I need people who advocate for themselves, right? I want people who are curious, who are forever learners, who will, press the leadership. Why do we do things this way? I've got a different idea. Here's how and I've thought it out, right? We want people who are proactive. Stephen Covey's habit of owning that space between the stimulus and the response. Now, it's hard to know when you hire that a person meets your core values as well as you would like them. So we'll get to it there in a second. Our ads are not paralegal needed, 3 to 5 years experience, salary negotiable, can multitask, because that's BS. That's what everybody is. Our ads are like, this would be a good place for you if, boom, boom, boom. This is not the right place for you if, boom, 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 right? Gary Halbert, long format, if you're familiar with his ad, when he was looking for a wife or a girlfriend, right? And if you never heard of this story and you're listening to this podcast, Google Gary Halbert, long ad for girlfriend. Go read it, model it, right? And now, okay, so that narrows the pool and it gets people who are much closer to a core value, good hire match. Now, you and them have to agree that over 90 days, we're going to date. And over 90 days, if this isn't the right place for you, you're going to tell me. And if I don't think it's the right place for you, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to pay you for the next month. I'm going to pay you for the 120 days. And there's no guarantee you'll be here after 90 days, but we are going to work hard to make sure that we are a good match. Because again, I want you to be around for a long time. Mistakes that people make are, and Ben has made, is hiring without a purpose. Like, we want to grow, but we're not asking these questions. We're running generic ads to get people who don't have jobs to come here and start here. The other mistake that Ben has made is that, Jeremy, like, you're a C+ player, but I could coach you up to an A player, right? And feeling like really confident, where that hasn't worked out, where I really should be spending my time coaching my A players and helping my C+ players find a new place to work, right? And we tell them that, and we tell them in our, I do a core values meeting and speech to a new hire. By the way, I meet the new hires on their first day of work, so I'm not involved in that process at all. So again, delegation of that whole deal. But we tell people, on our core, my core value talk to them is, we believe that work is a force for good. And we believe that you should only work at a place that you like working at, you're compensated right, and it's the best thing for your life. And I actually have a story on this. And if at some time you don't feel, Jeremy, that this is the best thing for your life, I will help you find that next spot, right, in your journey through life and your journey through the work. So hiring is hard, especially in this market. We're recording this summer of 22. The labor market is thin. People want more money. So we're going to see, the cost for labor to go up. People want to work virtually. That will work in some industries. It won't work in others. It will work with some people and not work in others, for others. And the wisest business owners are in mastermind groups with other business owners, intermixing, like not just lawyers, but lawyers and podiatrists and bagel bakers. And we're trying to figure this out. Because it's critical. Because if I have a great team, they don't need me. I can get out. My job then is to get out of the way.
Once they're there, Ben, what do you do to foster the culture?
Yeah. So in our law firm specifically, a couple of things. Number one, we have kind of rotating where leadership is taking out people sort of randomly selected and in small groups, 2 or 3 of them across departments, and we're having lunches. Number one. Number two, we have a monthly meeting, a monthly luncheon, right, where we're giving update on the firm, we're doing something fun, and we are doing some exercise where one or more of them are getting on their feet and presenting something. It could be presenting interesting cases we've worked on. It could be, hey, Jeremy, we have a young lady here who lived in Japan and taught English to Japanese students. Great. You're going to do Japanese 101 for us. Okay. Just 101 version A. Things like that. We have quarterly all-day business planning meetings here. And so with leadership. And so within the next week after that, we have a meeting. Hey, this is what came out of that business planning meeting. Here's our goals. We have goals on posters for revenue and profit and number of cases and things like that. But I think the most important thing we do, Jeremy, is we reinforce this, which is, I need to know, if you're working for me, Jeremy, I need to know what's perfect for you. Again, I can't guarantee it. When COVID started and people were, businesses were closed down, buildings were closed. Brian and I were always here. But we said to people, we had single moms with kids, right? That was tough. We said, we don't know anything about this worldwide pandemic. We don't know how to handle it. There's no book. I need to know from you, like, think about it. What would we like you? We want you to still work here. Well, how is that going to work? Do you need childcare assistance? Do you need change of hours? Do you need to be able to come in here to get work done? Right? Because working at home isn't perfect, but we made sure that our people knew that they could advocate for themselves. And Brian and I did our very best to fulfill everybody's wish and try to be fair and all that stuff. Running a business is not easy. And few businesses, I'll tell you this, there are folks, they've come from the working world, they go to other meetings and groups with folks who work in other firms. Nobody out there is treating their employees with the openness, I think, that we do, right? Like, this is a team. We want you here. I need to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's a collaborative approach instead of just commanding, here's what our policy is.
Yeah, so we say, like, if I have to manage you, you're not the right person. I don't need people here that I have to manage. I want to coach you, right? And I'll coach you in all facets, because I'm unlimited. You need to. I have 3 young ladies here who are getting married this summer. I've been married a long time. Great. I got some advice about that. So if you have a question about that, you come ask me. And so we have those. Yeah, we can have those discussions too. And a lot of biz owners are like, yeah, but what if they get really good and they leave? I go, what if they don't get really good and they stay? What if they stay 5 years and they're the same person they are today? Like, that's horrible.
We are talking about, what you don't want to do that you don't do anymore, and stepping into from entrepreneur to CEO. And that's a mindset thing for some people, right? Yep. So talk about ERISA and brief writing.
So ERISA is a niche practice of ours. We represent people who've been denied the long-term disability insurance, not Social Security, but long-term disability insurance claims. Involves reading files that are 1,500, 2,000 pages. It involves writing appeals and writing briefs for federal judges. And I would say to my coach, because I've had a personal corporate mindset coach for 5 years. Beginning, we met weekly. Now we meet once a month. I said, like, how can I scale? I can't scale this, right? Because I hate all that writing, or I grew to hate it. Like, it's a lot of work. And I said, nobody else could be able to do it. How could I teach him? He goes, well, we don't know. His name is Sammy. He says, Ben, we don't know until we ask the universe to answer that question. I go, tell me more about that. He says, what we need to do is to be able to articulate exactly who we're looking for, the avatar who out there. I said, well, smart lawyer, doesn't need to be licensed here, because they're writing in the background, and I'm reviewing their stuff. Attention to detail. Great. Start to tell all your friends that this is what you're looking for. All right, I'll do it, but it's not going to work. So I did it. Well, then I discovered this thing, the Military Spouse Legal Network. Wow. Think about it. You got to be licensed in every state. Let's say your spouse is in the military, they get transferred across state lines. It's hard to get a law license, right? It's stupid, but it's hard to get a law license easily as you move with your spouse. Oh, there's this whole world out there of really, really smart lawyers who are running at-home businesses, Jeremy, doing what? Writing briefs, reading files. Holy cow. Now, what was really cool was that because they were really smart and because we had a playbook, we could teach them the playbook. And boom, that enabled us to be able to scale that business really from for us at that time, at about $200,000 a year revenue, part of the business, to over $1 million last year, because I was very clear and intentional on who we were looking for. And I just left it. I only needed to find a couple of them. Left it to the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, like the world, to answer my question and to fulfill my wish. And then I had to say, you know what? Even if they don't do it quite as well as I do, but can get me 80% of the way there, now I get to work on the 20%, and now really the 5% of what I call, Jeremy, I put really good icing on really good cakes now. I don't bake the cakes.
Before you do what you want to do, right? And you hand it off. And maybe in the beginning, you kind of were really resistant to it. And now you've embraced it. do you have a specific process? Like right now, let's say, you have stuff that creeps up that you realize, okay, I need to get this off my plate. Do you have a process for evaluating certain things? Then once you evaluate it, like getting rid of it?
I'm holding, if you're not listening, if you're not watching the video, I'm holding up a journal. So I have been a big journalist for the last 5 or 6 years. I joke with my kids, I'll have a lot of material for my film. But always a page in the journal is a line down the page, stuff I hate doing. Stuff I
Is
like
this an
doing.
everyday journal? Like you journal every day?
This particular one is the self journal, so it's in quarters.
Mhm.
I also am a big fan of the passion planner. So actually I'm working out of two. One's kind of business and one's kind of personal. But yeah, it was creating that list of things that you do during the day or during the week, and just, okay, I don't like doing that. Just write it down. Don't worry about how we're going to solve that problem right now. Let's just write it down. And over time, looking at that list of things I don't like doing, you say, I really don't need to do this thing. If nobody did it, it wouldn't affect the business. All right. Email is like one of those things. When I do email, but I don't feel bad if I don't respond to all of in my world, all the vendors and people that are pitching me stuff. Like I don't have to respond to all that stuff. And so either, okay, I don't need to do it and it's not going to change anything, or, okay, I shouldn't feel guilty. I'm going to delegate this to somebody else. I'll tell you, we can talk about my friend who runs the Chick-fil-A unit here in a second. Or I'm going to find someone who, the thing is, I don't like to do it, but it's important. And now from Dan Sullivan, strategic coach world, who, not how. Like, who could really do it? And it really was how we scaled the Arista practice. Let me find someone who can do this, right? And we teach them what I need to teach them, and boom. Got a friend, I think it's a great example for your listeners. He runs a 1-unit Chick-fil-A here. They tell me one year he's working. So they're closed Thanksgiving Day, but he's in there for 5 hours preparing the place. He's the owner. He's the owner of the unit, and he's doing $12, $15 an hour work. Why? Because he said to himself, oh, my people deserve, no one else would want to work on Thanksgiving. Lo and behold, his team was mad at him. 2 reasons. Number one, a lot of his team weren't born in America. So Thanksgiving doesn't hold for them the special place that it does certainly for us, number one. Number two, they said, you're depriving me of the opportunity to make more money for my family because you were stupid enough, he tells the story, stupid enough as the owner to think that you were the only one that should be in here slicing the chicken or whatever it is that they do on Thanksgiving. So I think that's a very important story for any business owner who is concerned about delegating stuff that they don't like doing and they think like nobody would like doing this. No, not true. People, either because they're good at it, they like doing it, they need the money, they want the money, they want to serve, they want a different day off than Thanksgiving, whatever. They're out there, and we have to be willing to do that, because to delegate or get rid of these things we don't like to do, because what does it make us do? It frees us up to be a better owner. If we're a better owner, the company does better, and everybody now benefits from that. Because when the company does well, as the customers and the clients do well, now you can afford to pay more, you can offer more benefits, you're going to have a happier crew, no matter what the business is. So it's neat, Jeremy, how I think it all kind of works. It takes a long time. Founders typically are running a business because they're good at it. They're good at dog grooming, good at car detailing, whatever, cleaning houses, whatever it is. And it is this mindset, personality shift that goes, oh, you know what? The world is made better, and my employees and my customers and clients are made better. The more I become the CEO, leader of the company, and don't feel guilty about, and in fact, celebrate the fact that I'm not the one cutting the chicken, in Ben's case, writing the briefs, at least the first level briefs. We should celebrate that. I think it's good for the world.
Ben, when you speak, what resonates with me is, and it's helped me listening to you, hopefully it's helping everyone else, is we make certain assumptions. And some of the assumptions I heard you say is no one could do it as good as me, right? Which, as you know, is probably not true. They don't want to do it, which with your Chick-fil-A is not true. They may resent me for not doing the work, but like you said, you can make the company better. Are there any other assumptions that pop out, or they don't? There's so many assumptions that when you say it, it's like, well, we're making that as an assumption, and we think it's true. But what other assumptions am I making, or other people making?
Here's the biggest one, and in mastermind groups that I am in as a participant versus the ones where I run, but mastermind groups in a participant, I presented this to the group, and it's the big writ large is I feel guilty when I leave the office. I come in my t-shirts and I leave the office after a few hours because everyone else is working hard, right? Now I'm working. And I do stuff that I like doing, with like focus on marketing, present on podcasts like this, be the big thinker, right? But for me, it's not hard to do, and it doesn't take me very much time to do that. And it's called it's called actually founder's guilt. So I think if you Google that, founder's guilt, and I think the remedy or the solution for that is to just, I'm a huge fan. I read probably 70 books a year, or read and listen to on Audible, but reading these biographies of people who have changed the world, they all go through this, the process of working, building computers in your garage, really hard, sneaking into the computer center at night, Gates and Jobs and these guys to program, really hard work. And they're not building computers, right? They're not doing that stuff now. They all go through this process. And if you're a founder and you have a company and you're continuing to do the job, and and that's by deliberate choice, like you just like detailing the cars, whatever, and it's fine for you, that's fine. If by deliberate choice, that's fine. If what you're looking for is more money, more freedom, more autonomy, more time spent with 9 children or whatever it is, right? You have to figure out how to be the CEO coach of the team, I believe. And there's now lots and lots of models for that. And the very best advice I could give someone on that is to get into a group. We call it mastermind groups. You and I are in a group, with Brian Kurtz, is get in a group with people who are already doing it and listen to them tell their stories. And if they don't tell their story, you got to be curious, and you have to go up to them, at dinner time and in the morning and at breaks, and get them to tell their stories, because over time, you'll see that the stories are very similar. The principles are very similar. And most leaders I have found of great businesses are humble. They're willing to share what they have learned with people who will do something with it. None of us want our time wasted, right? Come to me, ask me for advice, and don't bring a pen and a paper. And that's not going to be a fun hour for me. You come, curious, you're taking notes, I will show you everything. And actually, I have a program, lunchwithben.com. You send me the sandwich, or if you're coming in live, you bring the sandwich, I'll bring the chips and the drinks, because I'm going to eat lunch anyway. And I get to meet with lots of different business owners, students. I do it for free for students, retired doctors, like what's the next thing in my life? Like, I don't know anything about that, but I do know principles. Bring me the sandwich, I'll bring the snacks and the drink, schedule a time, and I'll do it. And I'm happy to do it for people who are maybe listening to this. You can go to lunchwithben.com and you can read all the rules, which is show up, ask good questions, and bring me a sandwich or have it delivered. And I enjoy doing that. And I because I run into people I never would have run into, Jeremy.
I have one last question, Ben. And first, thank you. Yeah, one of my jobs, I had 3 jobs when I was in college at Wisconsin. And one of them was at a sub shop because I didn't care if they paid me. I just wanted that sub sandwich. So, and from the notes, you're looking at, I don't know if you could see, anyone watching this could see my notes from this conversation from Ben. So definitely taking notes here. But last question, Ben, and I want to point people to check out BenGlassLaw.com. They can check out greatlegalmarketing.com and now lunchwithben.com and all the great stuff you're doing there. I have to kind of circle this back around since, it is great legal marketing. Some of the stuff that you do, what you recommend, people love software tools and stuff that you use. I go on BenGlassLaw and you have this innovative like intaker with a video of you and you can click what you're looking for. What are some software tools that you use that you recommend or that you've heard your clients use
Sure.
that would be interesting?
So one of the most valuable tools I ever found was it's an app called SpeakRite. And so it's just dictation. It's a live human being that's going to take the recording and send me back a Word document really quickly. I'm a longtime user of SpeakRite. I'm a long time. So of course everybody needs a CRM. I was in one of Infusionsoft's first several hundred customers. Infusionsoft now keep, and so we run Infusionsoft in both businesses for our marketing. I'm trying to think of what else
Is there internal communication from the team that you use? Any tools like Slack or anything like that?
They use Slack. I tell them I don't need one more thing like that on my phone, so they know they can email me, but I don't use Slack. Oh, the other one is Calendly, which I think you're using as well. That is brilliant. I mean, to be able to say to somebody, hey, yeah, I'd like to chat, but I'm not going to do 27 emails to find a time. Calendly properly set up with the times and the reminders is magical. So, whether it's a client who needs 20 minutes, I don't talk to a lot of clients, but if they need to talk to me, boom, that's how we schedule this. If it's somebody who's an entrepreneur, just wants to have an hour with me and buy me a sandwich, lunch with Ben, you can go and see how that's all set up. So the guys and gals who invented that, like, hats off to them. I would pay them much more than they charge me because that is, I think, revolutionary. I use a couple, health apps.
What health apps?
I'm a Whoop user, right? So I track my sleep, my fitness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 64. I do CrossFit. I referee high school soccer games. I mainly work to be able to referee high school soccer games, which is really weird because you go there and people are screaming at you.
Sounds like a great stress reliever. You go and everyone's yelling at everything, every call.
I can run with 18-year-olds. That is really cool. And I love the high school athlete. The high school athlete is by and large, the boys and girls, young men and women, they are fantastic people to deal with. Some of the coaches, most of the coaches are great. Some of them aren't. Parents don't know anything.
Ben, I wanted to be the first one to thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out Ben's, what he's working on and some of the books that he has going on. And thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.